Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Verbal to Visual podcast. I am your host, Doug Neal, and on this show, you get to listen to one-on-one coaching calls that I have with folks who are developing and using their sketchnoting skills. Today, my guest is Miguel Cabral, who is interested in building out a skill tree for the software engineers that he manages. So in our conversation, we talk about how you might build out that specific type of diagram to help someone follow a particular learning path. So this is a great one for any type of educator, be it in a professional or in a school setting, and also for any individual who likes creating their own learning experiences. You could build out your own skill tree to follow. For show notes, head on over to verbaltovisual.com/17, where you will also find a video version of our conversation. This was the first time that I used Zoom for a coaching call like this, and it was fun to be able to share my iPad screen and capture some of our conversation with the small thumbnail images of both Miguel and myself. So if you're not there already, come watch us. We do talk through everything as well, though, so your audio-only experience will also be worthwhile. Let's get into it. All right, welcome, Miguel. Thanks for joining us today. I'm excited to chat with you. To get things started, I'll throw it to you just to give you a chance to introduce yourself, let me and listeners know kind of who you are, where you're coming from, and what you're working on in connection to your sketchnoting skills.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to speak with you. You know, I just joined Verbal to Visual maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I've been loving the experience so far.
Nice.
So a little bit about myself. I'm 33 years old. I'm a software engineer based in Mexico City. I am currently working for a Mexican fintech. We do like dashboards for financial institutions. And we also work on trading platforms and wealth management platforms. Right now, I'm the head of software engineering. I started like working here in March, and yeah, my first experience, I guess, with like visual thinking was maybe when I was in college. I stumbled upon Dan Rome's The Back of the Napkin book, and ever since I've been trying to apply most of it to engineering, which I think I'm doing okay so far. But now that I'm more like on a strategic side of things, more like on the business side, I'm trying to expand how I can communicate better with other people who are not engineers, right? So I guess that's why I'm here now.
Nice. It's always fun to hear kind of the gateway into visual thinking or graphic recording or sketchnoting, kind of whatever it is. And I think for a lot of people, Back of the Napkin was kind of I feel like one of the earliest like widespread books about visual thinking, maybe kind of geared toward the business communication setting. So I imagine that many of the listeners will be familiar with that book. It's a great one. I just remember how nice of a kind of structure it created. Like if you're talking about this type of information, use this type of visual, this type of information, this type of visual. Yeah, that's awesome that you've got a bit of experience with that and have used it. Sounds like kind of internally for a while, and now kind of want to go deeper into these skills and continue working on them and maybe using them with people that don't have the same background information as you. And I'm actually glad you mentioned that piece of it, because I do think that's where this sketchnoting skill set can come into play when there's like a experience gap or a knowledge gap, people from maybe a couple of different worlds or type of work. Like how can you create something to facilitate meaningful, productive conversations between you all? So that's great. That's helpful background. And for folks listening, so I'm trying something new today. Miguel has been generous enough to go along with this, using Zoom to record our conversation. And I've got a sketch pulled up on the screen as well. So I've done some experiments with like trying to record some sort of a video version of these conversations. This is kind of the latest iteration. But since we're using Zoom, I've got a sketch pulled up that Miguel created and kind of prep for this conversation. And, you can see the two thumbnail versions of Miguel and I here. So the goal is to like keep this as a helpful audio conversation. But then if folks want to check out the YouTube channel for this podcast, which is just the Verbal to Visual podcast. If you search that on YouTube, you'll find it, and you can kind of see the specific visuals that you're talking about. I wanted to mention that as a segue to throw it back to Miguel to kind of talk us through what you sketched out here and kind of the specific things you'd like to explore in depth today.
Absolutely. So what I'm doing is that I want to build like I guess you can call it a career path for my team, and I want to just go with them and be able to see how I can help them achieve like the next level in their career. So I was reading a book by Dr. James Steiner called Become an Effective Software Engineering Manager, and it speaks a lot about how sometimes managers don't have this way of helping their team in developing their own skills, right? So he proposes a way of I mean, he goes really like in depth in this thing called the zone of proximal development, which is this space where, I mean, it's a methodology like mainly used with kids, where like first you have what a kid can do on their own, then you have what a kid can do with some help, and then you have what a kid cannot do without help. So he basically, explains how you should always keep your team in the zone of proximal development, right? I mean, which is in the middle, I mean, you have to, see if you are the person who shows them how to take their skill into the next level, or if you pair them with a more senior engineer so they can help each other. And it really resonated with me. It's my second job as a manager, but in the past I was also doing a lot of coding and a lot of the execution, and now I'm more like on a strategic side of the business. So I've been like putting more effort now into see how I can help my team improve, right? So he explains how it's good to have like a skill tree for your team, which is what I'm trying to achieve here, and it's compared to what they use in video games, which like in mainly RPG, where you have like this whole set of skills, and you can choose which skill you want to develop. Like on one side maybe you're like a mage who just throws like magic, or on the other side you have like I don't know, like maybe you want to get better with your sword or whatever, but you can always see the whole tree, which I think is really helpful, because you can see where you can go. And also you, can dig deeper if you want into a specific skill, or you can skip one that you have already developed, or maybe you're not so interested in developing, right? So yeah, that's, I guess, where I am. Like I used to play a lot of video games when I was younger, and all of my team, it might sound a little cliche, but like they are all developers and they all play games. So I feel like this is something that will really resonate with them as well. And I think it's also going to be really fun.
Yeah, this sounds really cool to me. Partially as like, Matt, you sound like a great manager to be working under, which is really cool, just with your emphasis on
Trying.
yeah, helping those you work with develop their skills, and even like, and I just love this concept of a skill tree too, to help identify like here's the broad set, all of these individual skills that are going to help you continue like improving in your work, and here's this like structure that I think is going to be helpful for you to take. What's cool about it is that there's almost like a specific order in which to develop skills, but there's still choice in how you tackle that. And I think the video game analogy is like spot on, and it's great that that is kind of a common reference point as well. And I'm already can already tell that I think I'm gonna be a little bit jealous as we talk about this, because I feel like this is something that I can incorporate into how I teach sketchnoting.
Please
Um,
do, yeah, please do.
so yeah, this is a great topic, and I imagine folks listening too. I guess both within the case of skills that you're developing on your own, but then also if you're in any sort of a leadership or teaching role, as we're going to talk about this skill tree concept, like think about what skills you might be teaching to others and what that specific skill building tree might look like for those out there listening. Um, awesome. I feel like that gives us some great context for what you're up to, Miguel. Where do you want to go next? What else do you think would be helpful for us to understand as we get to some questions or some feedback on what you're up to?
I mean, in terms of where I am, like with my team, or just with the whole process.
Maybe with the whole process, maybe like if you want to chat through what you've kind of mapped out here as a little bit of an initial plan.
Okay, absolutely. So, I mean, starting on top, I have weekly one-on-ones with my team. So I send them what do you call it, a survey, so that they can tell me about what skills they want to develop. So on one side, I have gathered all the feedback from them, and I also have some specific things that my boss has asked me to to develop with my team. So I kind of have like what I feel like they need with what they want to do. So we have that part covered. Then with that, we found out, like, and I say me and another teammate or coworker actually, and we want to make sure that all of the team has a very solid base on DevOps, which is I guess it's one part of engineering, and it has to do with deploying applications and monitoring applications and things like that. So it's one skill that we want everyone to have. So with his help, I created a first draft, which is our skill tree for DevOps, or DevOps skill tree. I have that ready. It's divided into 2 week sprints, which is what we use internally for all of our work. So I think I talk a little bit about that in the next part. But yeah, so we have the first draft ready, and it's just a Google document. So I guess my next step is how can I make it more visual? I made a first attempt, and I sent it to you. Is on the right side there somewhere. But I kind of listed all the things that I consider are useful for what I'm calling is the apprentice path. And with his help, we came up with this map of skills and technologies which they should dominate. And the idea here is that as we go further into this tree, we should have something similar for the Jenkins, Docker, and Kubernetes path. So those three in the journeyman, I guess, level will be a tree on their own, which actually that's where we want to focus everything on, like on Jenkins, Docker, and Kubernetes. But for that, we need to set some solid ground first and some basics. But yeah, and also, I mean, we have the expert pad on top, which I think is going to be optional. I'm leaning to have that for my more advanced developers, and also for like the backend developers, not so much for our QA engineers and front-end developers. But I mean, if they want to explore it, I mean, it will be there for everyone, right? So yeah, so nice. I guess this is where I'm currently at. I'm trying to see how I can make this more visual and how I can make this more engaging. I'm thinking, and I think I also mentioned it on the template you sent, about how I can incorporate some gamification or some
Mm.
systems or something to just keep them engaged constantly. You know, I love the concept of gamification in modern apps, and I feel like it's really helpful to keep you engaged. So yeah. I'm trying to make it more visual. Then, as I mentioned, I already have the time frame defined. We have 2-week sprints. So we are going to check the progress every 2 weeks. And then we have releases every 6 weeks, you know. So ideally, you should be able to develop like most of one of the
Mm.
paths by that time. And we will review the whole skill set every Q, right? So it's first 2 weeks, then 6 weeks, and then I think it's 12 weeks. And there we can choose where we want to go next. So I think I have that already, I guess, very clear in my mind. After that, yeah, so I know that I want it to be a skill to layout because of what I already mentioned. You know,
Mm.
I think it will resonate with all of them being gamers, and it also has like it's very easy to incorporate like a reward-based system. So I know I want to do that. Not sure how I'm going to do it. And also, I don't know how I'm going to keep track of the progress. You know, I have eight people in my team, so it takes a lot of my time to do this, and I'm enjoying it a lot, but I don't have time to just go in depth with every one of them. So I will have to kind of rely with what they tell me and just go with that. But I want to be able to have a system or something where I can track the progress individually, and also the progress like of them as a whole, right? Because I think that would be
Mm.
like useful too. And yeah, the next step, which I think I already mentioned, is about how can I incorporate some elements of gamification, you know, how I can make it more engaging, and how can I make them see that the more time they invest into this is going to be more rewarding to them. And finally, I want to make this to be available to everyone in the company, so that if we
Mm.
have new developers in the future, I want them to just go to our documentation repository, and if they need help with DevOps, they can go and explore this interactive documentation. What do I mean by interactive? We use some tools in app development, which are called interactive prototypes. You know, we use tools like InVision or Figma. So it's basically a bunch of images connected. So it simulates the
Mm.
interactions that you go through with an app, and it shows how the flow of information goes, right? So for example, if I want to dig deeper with a specific node, I can click on the node and it will take me into the subtree, you know, and I can see each subtree. So that way you can move like in and out easily, you know, zoom in and zoom out. And I think that's going to make it very engaging, because sometimes when you have a presentation, it's very hard to just move between those layers of depth. And I think that can make it really cool, and that's something that I've been wanting to try to, you know, is. So yeah, I guess that's where I am.
That's
What do you think?
that's great. I mean, there's so many things I enjoy about this. First, before I forget, I feel like Figma is a tool that has come up within verbal to visual. I think maybe within the course digital sketchnoting potentially. Do you feel like that's a type of tool that is accessible enough, or that folks that are just generally into sketchnoting and visual thinking, is that a tool that sketchnoters might be interested in exploring, in terms of like how it might be helpful for, I don't know, anyone like thinking through a process or building a presentation or like understanding a topic? Or is it kind of more suited for folks that are doing mock-ups or designs or like user experience type work? Is it
Yeah,
specific just to that?
I think it's more focused on illustration. Well, it's kind of like Sketch or Illustrator, you know. So it's very good for making layouts. I mean, what I have done is that sometimes I sketch something, and if I want to make my boxes prettier or have like more more colors or add some interaction, I use it. So yeah, I feel like if you want to take your sketch notes or if you have like an important presentation and want to do something a little more sharp than sketch notes might work, you know. But I'm really new to it as well. So that's all I can tell you. What I really like about it is that it's a collaborative tool.
Mhm.
So two people can be working on the same canvas at the same time, you know. So that's amazing, and you can also leave comments on specific pixels. So it's really cool.
That's cool. Nice. Well, thanks for giving us a little bit of background on that tool. And yeah, there's so much that excites me about what you just described. And maybe to swing back first to the kind of draft of this skill tree that you shared. I'll try to kind of generally describe it, but there are kind of three rows to it, and it's a type of flow that's from bottom to top, which I like because that fits the tree analogy, right? Growing up from the roots. Whereas what I first sketched out with the skill tree was kind of like top to bottom, just because I think I was in the mode of, left to right, top to bottom with
Yeah, I
general
wanted to
information flow.
just
Um,
grow. You know, it's
yeah, it's
it's a
growing.
growing kind, you know. So I like that
Yeah.
analogy as well.
And the first level of it, the bottommost layer, is this apprentice layer. Above that is the journeyman layer, and then above that is the expert layer. So it kind of just helps to make clear what the pathway is to kind of move on from one level to the next, which again, just as like uh, an employee, someone who like works with you in this organization, having it kind of like mapped out in that way um, just feels so helpful. And at this point, it is the apprentice layer, the first stage that has the most detail to it. So you've got the most branches there, which makes a lot of sense because that's the where folks are going to be starting, and where most time will be spent for a while at least. But I like that you've got some of the pieces, the main chunks there already for the journeyman and the expert layers also. And then I'm just kind of curious here, zooming in on that apprentice layer. What you've essentially created is a mind map for folks listening. Um, uh, I guess it's part mind map, but also kind of flow chart because there is like, a flow to it, kind of a direction that things go. Um, with the starting point being this dev ops path, and the first three branches being OS, the operating software, the second branch being managing servers, the third branch being terminal, which again aren't things that I, fully understand what those mean, but you can kind of uh, see where it goes from there. Um, so this path um, feels like there's quite a bit to it already, which is great. So I guess to kind of like zoom back out a little bit, I just wanted to describe what this skill tree looks like. And again, maybe as a follow-up activity for me, I'll be like, what are the different layers for sketchnoters, and kind of what lives within each of those layers. That'll be fun for me to think about. But then to
Please
get
do
back,
it, man. I would love to see that.
yeah, I think that would be cool and really helpful. I mean, part of I apologize for continuing to think back about like my work and the things that I want to do with what you're talking about, but
Oh, it's
what
great.
the way this
It's
resonates with
great.
me is one of the things that I've been thinking about and done some drafting around for the courses that I offer at Verbal to Visual. It's not yet in like a skill tree mode like this. It's more like a big map, kind of like what I have for each of my courses. Each individual course kind of has its own course roadmap that shows like what we're going through within each lesson and module and all that, but I don't yet have a visual representation of the kind of broader sketchnoting journey. So I was imagining not too dissimilar from like a game map or a, you know, map from some fantasy land and like Lord of the Rings or something like that, where it's like each
Right.
course maybe is its own island, and like here are the paths that you can take from one course to the next depending on um, like what you want to do with your sketchnoting skills. So that kind of large map is one way that I've started to think about representing the bigger sketchnoting journey. But what you have here is something uh, different and potentially more helpful, in that you've got these kind of layers that yeah, it's almost like, you know, leveling up from one category to the next. But within each category, it's real specific, the individual skills that need to be developed. So I just, again, think this is really cool. One of the things that you mentioned that I wanted to riff on for a second, now that we've got a sense for like what the skill tree is like, the tracking of the progress seems really interesting, um, both from an individual level and kind of seeing where everyone on the team is at. Because at first, when you were talking about the tracking of the progress, I was like, well, it seems like you could just, you know, print out or have some place on the web communally where like each person has their own skill tree, and maybe each level has like a checkbox next to it, right? So you can just like mark off, I've done these, I'm working on this one right now. You can have that for each individual person for a quick view of where they've been and like where they're going next. That sounds like a helpful reference. And then I'm just trying to,
I mean, yeah,
yeah, go
like,
ahead.
oh yeah, I mean, I thought about having something like that, you know, where, I mean, first I thought that I would keep track of each one of their skill trees, and then I thought that it was maybe too much effort on my side. But what I do want to have is to, at the end, you know, when, I mean, after each year, you know, just to have like a tree with all of their skills and all of the notes highlighted, and make it kind of like a, I mean, I'm thinking like a tech DNA. I mean, to
Mm,
see how you are as a developer, you know, and I feel like it could, I mean, eventually turn into something like a really cool, like visual resume. I mean, I thought about that for myself, but
yeah.
I think that would be like a really cool gift for my team.
Huh. Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think what how that could work too is that rather than you being the person to check all the boxes and keep track of it, they each do it themselves, right?
Mhm.
And they can be the ones who, uh, you know, maybe map out their own kind of flow through the tree and check off the skills as they have them, and potentially too, maybe like it could be interesting to try to incorporate into the tree a place to capture like major sticking points or major challenges, because I imagine like some of these skills folks are gonna, you know, be able to pick them up relatively quickly. It's just that the time and effort to learn whatever it is they need to learn. But for other skills, it might be like there's a roadblock where maybe they need a little bit of help from you or from someone to like figure out this piece of it. And it could be interesting to, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but um, potentially even have like some spaces on the tree to record that when there's a stumbling block,
Right.
just to help identify uh, where that happens, and like, okay, what's the additional little like resource that might help that person overcome whatever challenge that they're having. Um, does that seem like it would be a helpful thing to include with this, or might that clutter
No,
things?
I mean, I think that like I was thinking about like zooming in some of these branches to have more space, but I think that what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, you know, in terms of adding there, you know, like their own, I mean, I don't know if just their own definitions of that skill, or the things that they learn, which I think maps really well for the apprentice side. But for the next, I guess, level, I think that it'll be good to have something like that, but with some specific, I guess, like small projects, or something more practical, because I feel like if you only stick with theory in technologies, it's really hard for you to be learned. So I think that could work. I mean, to have like these small bubbles with specific projects or specific things, like maybe that could work.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned just the general idea of projects because that brings up the question of um, what are folks doing to demonstrate that they have learned this skill? Um, what will that look like? I mean, it sounds like for the journeyman stage, it's pretty clear that like some sort of a project is a good way to demonstrate an understanding of the things that live at that layer. For the skills that you've identified in this apprentice layer, um, are projects relevant there? Maybe like in connection, not with an individual skill, but maybe like a group of skills? Or what do you think is the best way to both for you as the manager, but maybe even just more importantly for the individual, like how will they know that they have reach this when they can check off the box for a given skill?
Okay, so I mean, if you look at the tree, it says I think on the fourth node from bottom to top, like on the right, it says what is and how to set up a, right. So there, that's like I think the only practical side of this part of the tree, because here you actually have to know what is a forward proxy and how to set up a forward proxy, so that will make them and force them to do the exercise, right? So I mean, maybe they can do it like as simple as they want, or as I guess elaborate as they want, but I think here, I mean, it'll be like really easy to know if they have done it or not, like with the
Yeah.
other parts. I mean, it's more definitions and going over some concepts that they should already know. Maybe like on the right side on the terminal, that's, I mean, there are some parts there specifically where it says text manipulation, where I mean, you cannot see that here in the tree, but you can see it in the draft. But the text manipulation part, it has a bunch of commands that I want them to explore and try and tell them what they found about that. So that's also a little bit practical. But the rest, I think it's mainly just to go over some definitions and yeah, I mean, I guess some of these things they saw them in college maybe, and just haven't, I mean, just much, but
Yeah. And do you have a sense too with um, these specific skills and knowledge in some case, uh, will they be kind of on their own to use their college textbook or do their own research to kind of attain these new skills? Or is some of that built into your organization as far as learning resources go?
no, I like in the first draft, I included some references and some links to documentation and things that might be helpful. I mean, I actually started with this first sprint already, and I told them that what I want and what I expect from them is to, I mean, they have to share their file with me, and I kind of want to see how their process is individually. I mean, I told them that they are free to use any format they want. If they stumble upon a diagram online that helps them understood a specific concept, I want them to just add it into this document,
Hmm.
because at the end, I kind of want to also see how is their learning process, and see how is their, I guess, creative process, if you can say that.
Yeah.
And also have like a collection of links that might be useful for other team members, right?
Hmm.
So I want to see how they do it. I just want to share it with me. I mean, maybe they want to just have a definition of each command, or maybe they want to post a link to the example or to the code repository they are using, whatever, So Yeah, I mean, I'm giving them some hints, but it's up to them to really dig deeper.
That's cool. I like that there's a place for them to share, the resources that they're using, what they're learning. What is that place? What's the tool or software where like they are putting those things that you can also see?
The document is just a text document, and I also encourage them to use Bitbucket, which is a place where you store like it's code for it's a repository of code, you know, where you keep your project. So if they want to do something like a mini project, they will just share that with me, and then I can download that code and run it myself, you know, and actually validate it or see it. So it's just text document and the code repository.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's within that text document where they're kind of tracking or sharing what they're learning, and they can bring images or share links or things like that within that document then.
Yeah, I mean, I can share it
Cool.
with you just in case if you want
Yeah,
to
no,
take.
it's really interesting too, because what you're, oh, I think I might have to,
Oh, it's fine. It's
oh,
okay. I mean, I can send it after. So
okay. Yeah. Well, again, what that had me thinking of too was this concept of learning in public, which I think about quite a bit for folks, anybody developing any skill, like documenting your learning online in some way by sharing like the projects that you're working on, the resources that you're using, like maybe just in blog post form. But I think it also works great internally within an organization, just so that as folks are learning new skills, like yes, the benefit is to them individually, but when you have like someone else to share your learning journey with, particularly like a manager who can be a supporting role in that process, um, I feel like it just makes the experience more um, meaningful and like easier to track and make progress. So I think that's a cool part of it. And it seems like that can be a place where they can keep updating their tree, right? If they're the ones tracking it. Um, yeah, so that's cool. And you have you been using a document like that for a while, or is that like a new thing for this most recent sprint that you mentioned?
I mean, I have a shared document with them, you know, for our one-on-ones, and I just created this like first draft for this particular skill. And I just, I mean, share it with everyone, but they still have to share theirs with me, you know. So yeah, it's all new.
Hmm, that's really cool.
Yeah, and I didn't mention this, but I mean, this is a skill tree that applies also to myself, you know, because
Oh yeah.
I am like in the journeyman level right now, you know, with at least Docker and some part of Jenkins, but I'm also creating this for myself in a way, you know, and I feel like, I mean, what you mentioned is important, you know. I've been feeling like I've been learning a lot of new things recently, and a lot of those concepts haven't really stick with me. So I feel like if I can make it more visual, it will definitely, you know, pay off for myself as well, you know. So this is also an experiment for myself,
Hmm,
and I will also follow this specific skill tree.
nice. That's really cool. Yeah. And that speaks to the fact that even as individuals learning new things, you can like create your own skill trees. Um, at certain levels, that might be challenging because once you get far enough up it, you might not know what you need to know next. But you can at least like get it started. And even maybe rather than trying to like map out the whole tree first and then follow it, you just use this tree diagram as a way to document what you are learning. Like each new thing that you learn, you add it to the tree. And what's cool about that is that I feel like you might realize like, oh, I've learned this thing over here, this thing that's in the middle of my tree, and this thing that's on the left of my tree. And now I can see that I can kind of combine those things to do this new thing that I maybe didn't really like realize that like this was a project that I could now do with these individual skills that I've developed. So I feel like there's like a it's the type of reference that's almost like creates opportunities or like points to the next thing that you could do or make with whatever it is that you're learning. So I don't know. Yeah, there's a certain momentum that I feel like can come from this. And almost, I've been trying to think about the gamification piece that you mentioned too. Like a lot of it, or at least some of it, I feel like is already there because people they're going to want to see their own tree grow. Um, and maybe like that, yeah, that in and of itself is there, checking off these skills as they work their way up it. And one idea that comes to mind that could potentially get at maybe both the gamification and then also the kind of more of a group reference for like where the team is at. I don't know if there's like a simplified version of this type of tree that maybe has a slightly more representational format to it so that it actually like looks and feels like a tree. um I'm drawing a real sloppy sketch of it right now, but if you have some tree diagram that maybe has some layers to it, uh, and each person like has they're on a little card or something, a common reference point where folks can just like see what each person is working on at the moment,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
they can see what everyone else is working on too. The challenge, of
Nice.
course, is like you don't want it to be too much of a competition, like who's going to get to the top of the tree first, unless you wanted to, unless that fits the like
Like,
company dynamics. Um, but even just showing on the wall somewhere in the office or a common document, depending on what work looks like for you and everyone right now. But yeah, some like single diagram where each person on your team is represented that shows what they're working on. Something like that could be cool, maybe.
I like that. Yeah, I'll explore that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Does that seem like it would be um, helpful and motivating for your team from like a dynamics and culture perspective? How are you thinking that might work out?
I think so. I mean, like half of the team is in Monterrey and half is in Mexico City, and also we have one person in Miami, in Florida. So it wouldn't be like in the office, but maybe I
Hmm.
can find a way to just share it with them, like one-on-ones or in our like Monday meetings with everyone. I mean, I think it could be a good. I mean, I guess a good motivation for everyone.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Well, this has been awesome to explore. And we've chatted about some of these topics that you initially outlined here. As we get creeping up to the top of the hour here, is there maybe like one more question or one more topic that you would like to explore today that you feel like would help you continue moving forward with what you're working on?
Mm, let me see. I jotted something down here, so let me open it up because I think we covered everything, but maybe I have one last question. Let's see. Yeah, like I guess in terms of the visual documentation, I might need some like some reference or something to just make it more appealing, because I know that I want you to be able to just navigate between trees, but I'm still not sure how I can make it more engaging.
Mm,
I mean, it's a broad question, but
right. One thing that might be worth looking into, there are, what's the most recent one that I used? I think it's an app called Miro, Miro.
oh, yeah, I've used it before.
What made that one come to mind, if I'm remembering it correctly, is that there's a pretty dynamic mind mapping tool built into Miro that could be a great place to build the tree, um, because it will, yeah, any sort of like mind mapping software could be a good place to build it. Like this first version that we've been talking about, you've mostly sketched it out by hand, right? It's like rectangles that maybe you created by hand or in a on a computer, but everything else, all the words and the lines are drawn by hand, which is my favorite way to do any sort of first draft of something. But bringing it into like a mind mapping software, maybe Miro, if it feels like it's a good fit, could be a nice next step, because of how like clean it can look, and like you can do some cool color coding. And I'm pretty sure you can also add like icons, add visuals to each node as well. And what I like about using a tool like that is that it continues to, the tree itself can continue growing in a flexible way, without you having to like sketch out the entire thing again every single time, right?
Yeah.
Have you looked at any or used in the past? It sounds like you mentioned you've used Miro, but is like mind mapping software familiar to you at all? Can you kind of
Yeah,
picture that?
yeah. We actually use here one called Mind Mapper, and I have used Miro in the past, but so I think it could work because yes, it's very, I guess, tedious to sketch everything by hand, and if one node changes, then I have to do a lot of editing. So I think that's a good idea. You also mentioned colors, which I kind of wanted to work with colors. I mean, maybe have like, I mean, since I have, like a front end team and a back end team, like maybe the skills uh, and the roles should be similar.
Mm.
Like I am currently doing already, I mean, none of you remember that I share with the community a sketch of how I was doing my meetings, and it had like this, like all the
Mm.
actors. So each color means something, I mean, it means either backend or drawing designer or business analyst. So I mean, maybe if I can also relate those colors into each skill to just, I mean, make it more obvious that I'm developing a backend skill or a DevOps skill. I mean, I think that could work like really well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, especially since you've already been kind of incorporating that color coding into the way you run and capture meetings. I think that's awesome.
Great, great.
Cool. So we've chatted about a bunch of things today. What do you feel like will be the follow-up actions that you would like to take in response to our conversation today?
Well, I think I have to dig a little deeper on the tracking side. I feel like that's where I still not very sure how I can. I mean, I can do it easier for myself. Then I think I want to go ahead and sketch out like, I mean, like what you mentioned with adding icons and colors. I think that's also going to make it like more attractive and also easier for them to just, I guess, follow up with new skill trees, and also use a tool like mind map or Miro, because yeah, it's really slow for me to write, and also my handwriting isn't great. So um, and let's see what else. Well, is that we've covered so many things that I feel like I have a lot of homework.
Yeah, well, the initial plan that you kind of mapped out has a lot of really cool pieces to it, like the things that we started with, from the, progress tracking with some of the time frame things to the gamification and the interactive documentation. So I can see the role that all of those will play. And it also, I mean, a lot of it feels like to the type of thing that you can add on to this over time. Like you don't have to do all of these things before your team members start using them, right? So that's kind of nice that you can add on one thing at a time. And it will be the case too that when you're using this with your colleagues, that's what's going to inform, what's working and what isn't, and what might be worth improving or adding into this skill tree next. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to get like too excited and just do everything. And if they don't use it, then it's going to be all pointless, right? So
right.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
some really good advice. And to just go
Yeah.
and see how it is going. And if they like it, then I'll just invest more time, But
There you go. Sounds great. Well, keep in mind too that we would love to see where it goes from here. So if you do end up maybe exploring one of those mind mapping tools, and if the next iteration of this skill tree here, if you're comfortable sharing with it, we'd love to see it. So
I will.
uh,
Yeah,
either
absolutely.
send it to me in a message on Verbal to Visual, or share it within the classroom to show folks what's going on. And maybe, depending on when this episode goes out, that might already be ready for folks listening and or watching. So do check out the show notes for this episode to see the latest.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I wanted to add that I like one of my friends. He's a graphic designer, and he recommended a book by this guy named Manuel Lima. I think he's from Portugal, and it's a book called the Book of Circles,
hmm,
and it's just a collection of I want to say like infographics about all these circle, I guess, data visualizations and representations. It has like all kinds, from all, like some are really old, and
hmm,
I found that he's got one called the Book of Trees, which I recently bought. I
hmm,
have it right here. This is,
nice.
so I'm
That's
gonna explore
awesome.
this one too, and see if I can get some interesting ideas. I have already found some really nice templates that I want to try, but yeah, hopefully I can find something to, I guess, complement what I'm doing here with these skill trees.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that resource. Because I imagine anyone who uh, wants to go with a similar type of visualization route, maybe it's a skill tree, maybe it's some other sort of tree as a diagram, having a book like that with all sorts of examples sounds great. So I am going to add that to my book list as well.
It's amazing, man. You're gonna love it. Like, you will love every single page. It's really cool.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for that recommendation. Cool. Anything else you'd like to share before we hop off our call for today?
No, I mean, I just want to thank you again. I mean, I think it's really valuable to have these spaces. I mean, like, I just recently started to know your work, and I feel like I have come to admire what you are doing and how you're doing it. It's been really helpful for me so far, and to be able to have a conversation with you, it means a lot to me. So I mean, thank you, and I hope it's not the last time we see each other.
Hey, well, thank you so much as well. I have very much enjoyed our conversation, and conversations like these makes it so much more fun to explore these skills. And even though I'm kind of like in this role of a teacher, I'm much more alongside everyone as like learning and experimenting, just as everyone here is. So I really appreciate these chats as well. So thanks for taking the time and experimenting with this new video format. I think it went pretty well. So looking forward to probably sticking with this for future chats. Um, with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you once again, Miguel, and do keep in touch as you keep working on this.
Okay, I will.
All right, see you, Miguel. Have a good one. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. And I ask you the question, what skills are you developing right now? How are those skills linked to previous ones you've learned? And what even newer skills are you growing toward? If you were excited by our conversation, you might consider mapping out your own skill tree, maybe for your own individual learning, maybe for those that you work with. To share with us how that's going and to build out your visual thinking skills, come join us within Verbal to Visual's courses or community. There are a ton of skill building opportunities there, and keep in mind that if you sign up for a course or the community, you get access to one-on-one coaching calls like what you just listened to. More information at verbaltovisual.com, and you can add a /17 to get to the show notes for this specific episode. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck building out your own skill tree and following it if that's something you choose to do. And I look forward to sharing another conversation with you next time. Until then.